Lew's larger than life, although I doubt if he's even 5'9". He never eats butter. He gets up before the rest of the world. He smokes cigars bigger than himself. He was a mogul, I must say, and he really was Mr. Television.
For people who know Sir Lew, the one thing when you're with him in company is never to wear a brown suit, because he does tend to pick you up and light you.
Lew doesn't smoke cigars. He smokes cigars. And I said, how many cigars are you smoking? He said, oh, my doctor told me to cut down to 7 a day.
When you decide to do a production of major significance, it's the quality and the idea of the project that counts, not what is it going to cost. That you face afterwards.
Well, I have learned a great deal from Lord Grade, my Louis. More I have learned humility. More I have learned how to be a star. And more I have learned the Charleston.
He's a guy that's smart, breaks up every party. Hullabaloo, don't care what you do, don't bring a Lulu.
What Lew gave television was fizz. Fun. No, fizz.
Lulu always wants to do what the boys don't want to do. When she struts herself around.
If you've ever seen him get on the table and dance his Charleston, and I've seen him do it a couple of times after the age of 70, you know that the man's larger than life.
True.
He is a figure completely unlike any that you'll find again in this business.
First question I'd like to ask you really is, did you feel you would ever get into television?
I had no idea at all.
Because you were a man of the theatre, really, weren't you?
I was just involved in theatre and booking talent. I love talent. I love talent of all kinds.
And at what point did you wake up one morning and say, I'm going to go into television?
I had a telephone call from a man, a friend of mine called Mike Nidoff, an American. He said, have you seen the Times this morning? I said, I don't even read the Times. Why, what's in it? He says that applications for commercial television. I said, I've been hearing all about that. You're going to find 3 million. Where have I got 3 million? He said, if you can raise 1 million, we'll raise the 2 million. Then I called Val Parnell.
Val at that time ran the Palladium and all the
He ran all the principal theatres in this country. I said, Val, you're in the television business. And we called the company ITC.
And you failed in your application, didn't you? You put the bid in.
We failed in our application for one reason only. There was a big campaign to say that we controlled all the talent.
Now your Lew Grade's connected to your Leslie Grade, and together they made an organization they called Grade, and Brother Bernie's plying the same trade. Them Grades have got it made.
This was because you had the agency at the time,
which handled Laurence Olivier and John Gielgud and Ralph Richardson, including all the great big orchestras like Billy Cotton and his band.
You don't think there was an element of snobbery in it, that they felt that this was kind of showbiz?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. They really felt we had too much control of the talent.
Dim lights, bright lights, dim lights, dim lights. The grades made dim lights, bright lights, dim grades have got it made.
And then they gave the license to the Norman Collins Group, which included C.O. Stanley of Pye, but the city and the investors didn't have confidence in their program-making ability. So the ITA called me. They said, look, would you go in partnership with them and be responsible for all the programming? And that's how ATV was formed.
Now your Lew Grade's connected to your Leslie Grade, and ATV is connected to your Lew Grade, and together they made an organization they called Grade. And when Lew left the organization, Les stayed. Through him the Shadows, Frank, Highfield, and Cliff Richard get paid, and the Palladium is the place which they have all played, which is owned by ATV, which is Lew Grade, and ATV owns Pye Records, who do a fine trade. And the Daily Mirror's Hugh Cudlip is on the board of ATV, sitting near to Lew Grade. And they invited Max Aitken of the Daily Express, and he came and he stayed. And all this has been achieved in just 2 decades. Them grades have got it made. Yeah!
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
With the launch of ITV on September the 22nd, 1955, the BBC's 20-year monopoly of British broadcasting came to an end. Commercial television would bring with it a brash new style to which no one was more suited than Lew Grade, and soon his instinct for business and his eye for talent would begin to reap large rewards.
The first gamble you took really was to commission your first program, which was Robin
Well,
Hood.
what happened was, when we were told we didn't have the license and that we had a production company, I met a woman called Hannah Weinstein. And she said, I'd like to do a series on Robin Hood. I said, I like the sound of that. How much are they going to cost? They said, £390,000. I said, okay, go ahead. Then about a week later, I thought I'd better let the board know. And they said, what a terrible thing you've done. You've committed $390,000 out of the $500,000. That was all we had. And the chairman said, if Lew Grade has given his word, that's it. We'll live by it.
Perhaps I'd best look after the box, Robin. No, I think this might prove too much for you.
And of course, Robin Hood was the biggest success of almost any television series. We went on for several years.
Grade's gamble paid off, as Robin Hood went on to become ITV's first popular series and a commercial success abroad. Its winning formula of righted wrongs and daring do's struck a chord with post-war audiences and created a new television genre, the ITC swashbuckler.
It's a great improvement, I grant you. But you'll never show me a crossbow that'll beat the longbow. No.
Come away with William Tell. Come away to the land he loved so well. What a day when the apple fell for Tell and Switzerland.
Lew very quickly came to the forefront as being the enthusiast, the dreamer up of ideas, or the recognizer of ideas that would be commercial.
You flatter me, my lord.
They were pretty sharply made in a fairly simple way and dedicated to only one thing, and absolutely entertainment. And Lew was good at that. He thought in simple concepts, and he thought in concepts to do with, I suppose he thought about feel-good television before anybody invented the phrase.
Nice of you to welcome me back with a feast, Captain. I ought to welcome you back with the back of my hand.
Those early days, the buccaneering days, were quite extraordinary. No program ambition seemed unattainable. Budgets were simply unheard of. It's extraordinary to have to say that, but there was a time. when all this was true. And Lew was right in the thick of that.
But while Grade ruled the high seas of international sales, back home he faced constant battles with his ITV rivals.
What was it like working in a federal system? You weren't your own master of the network. You were the master of ATV, but it was pretty difficult getting the network into line. Because you obviously played a big part in shaping the schedule in those days.
It actually took 3 days. That means 3 different people had to meet. Howard Thomas of ABC, John McMillan of Rediffusion, Cecil Bernstein of Granada. 3 meetings, 3 mornings, and the schedules were done for 6 months.
How did you know to schedule? How did you know what programs to commission?
Well, I thought to myself, I know what I'll do, like on Sunday. I'll start off with a half-hour comedy show, and which was I Love Lucy. Then I'll do an hour Sunday night at the Palladium. Then I'll do an hour drama. And then I'll finish with a film, or an hour action-adventure film. And it worked, because it's varied entertainment. Because when you put a variety bill together, you cannot please the whole audience with the whole program. Therefore, you have to have sufficient elements in it, so at least half of the program appeals to all the audience. And I use the same tactics on television.
What do you want if you don't want money? What do you want if you don't want love? Say what you want and I'll give it to darling. Wish you wanted my love, baby.
Lew was a wheeler dealer, and in my opinion, the best there ever was. And so his daily routine was really to negotiate with the others the best deal that he possibly could, getting as many programs as return for the programs that he provided them with.
Gentlemen, may we resume?
He enjoyed a good old-fashioned row. And one of those, I remember, was taking place among all the network managing directors at ITV's headquarters. And there were at least half a dozen voices raised in furious altercation. And suddenly, over the din, we heard the banging of a gavel and Lew's voice appealing to the referee, as it were, "Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman." And everybody stopped. And Cecil Bernstein turned to Lew and said, "But Lew, you're the chairman."
You must have had differences. Were the differences about money or about programs?
Well, the biggest argument I had with Howard Thomas was about how much he would pay for Sunday night at the Palladium. I wanted £6,850, and he only wanted to pay me $6,800. Out of our 4-hour meeting, 2 hours was spent arguing about that £50. Eventually, I got the £6,850 because I knew he couldn't do without Sunday night at Palladium.
Here, suddenly, ATV was introducing the American style of the same program every week at the same hour so that people could make a regular habit with it. And they made a regular habit with Sunday night at the London Palladium.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sunday night at the London Palladium.
They knew what the audience, what would pull an audience into their theatres. And they reckoned that what would pull an audience into their theatres would make an audience sit round and watch a television set. It had gloss, glamour, it had dancing girls, it had game shows right in the middle of it. So that if you didn't like variety, you usually liked the excitement of Beat the Clock.
Good, that's one. Well done.
I saw Beat the Clock in America, which was a whole half-hour show.
2, good, good. Now, easy does it.
I thought if we could adapt that for about 12 to 14 minutes, And that's what happened.
Don't be impatient. Good. Take it easy. Easy now.
Beat the Clock was the centre stone.
Oh, what bad luck. Well, oh, goodness gracious. Well, that's the nearest thing I've ever seen.
And it was #1 in the ratings. I mean, for as many years as it was on.
It really is.
Lew had made a puppet act very popular in England on Sunday night at London, played him, Topo Gigio.
Music, please. Oh, that's better.
And a couple of years later, they were short of a top for the London Palladium the following Sunday, and this was like the Friday. And Alec Fine rushed into Lew and said, problem solved is I got Tito Gobbi, who's a famous tenor. So I got Tito Gobbi. And Lew says, no, not that bloody Mars act again.
Your reputation obviously was founded on popular successes, and yet you did make inroads into culture, didn't you? For example, the Golden Hour. Perhaps you should tell people what the Golden Hour was.
Well, I was traveling on a plane with my wife for a couple of days to Switzerland when I read in the paper that Maria Callas and Tito Gobbi were going to appear in Tosca at Covent Garden. I said to my wife, you know what? I'd like to do a program which I would like to call the Golden Hour and try to get Maria Callas and Tito Gobbi to do an excerpt from Tosca. I then offered it to the network, and the network said, no, it'll get no rating, we'll get no advertisers, we can't afford it. I said, okay, I'll get the advertisers. I went to the chairman of Unilever, I went to the chairman of Beecham, I went to the chairman of some of the leading advertising agencies. I said, I want you to advertise in this program. It won't get you any ratings, but it'll get you great prestige. And sure enough, they all advertised it. Then the network took the program. In fact, it got excellent ratings.
You also had a great record in drama too.
Yeah, Probation Officer, Playmakers, The Power Game. The Power Game was really the forerunner of Dallas.
This isn't a holiday excursion. I need Dowling and Henderson here to analyze this stuff.
How was Keith?
Fat and pompous.
Are we buying or selling, and if so, what?
Neither.
It was a very rich period for ITV.
And Emergency War 10 was a success.
Emergency War 10 was the forerunner of Dr. Kildare, Marcus Welby in America, all those shows.
Well, young woman, you're a bit of a mystery, aren't you?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Perhaps I should have started on antibiotics, but as you know, I'm not one for shooting in the drugs until I know what's going on inside.
So, what are you going to do? Oh, dear.
I think a lumbar puncture is a jolly good idea.
You think it might be meningitis, then?
Well, there's a possibility. You are showing signs of meningeal irritation, aren't you? Don't worry, we can cure it.
The company was a song and dance company with drama of what you would call now a real populist nature. Emergency Ward 10s and Crossroads.
This focal point you're looking for. Well, couldn't it be something like, well, a figure, you know, representing the spirit of the Midlands? You know, a sort of spirit embodying all the, you know, the ideal spirit of a Midlander. A figure, yeah.
Let's have a look at the idea of an ideal Midlander. It would have to have a driving force.
Good humour.
Yeah. Yes, a sort of cheekiness of the Midlands and a a down-to-earth quality. It could work, Meg. It could. What or who do I use for a model?
Well, you'll have to go on looking now, kid.
You, Meg! You, right under my very nose.
Come on.
Okay, I'll buy that. You can reset the...
Every aspect of ATV was Lew. I mean, he was there from 7 o'clock in the morning until God knows how late at night, so he didn't miss anything. He'd always be wandering through the corridors. He'd wander into the studios. He'd open the door. He'd put his head round the door. He'd talk. He'd kibitz. He conveyed and imparted to it his own ebullience.
Music.
Like the beat of the tom-tom, when the jungle shadows fall.
Millie. Hello, lovey.
The company, as soon as you joined it, you knew it was a song and dance company.
Want to hear a bit of it? Well, hang on a sec, here it comes. Hold on, because we're playing a piano.
Every time you walked into the editing room, you had to fight your way past Jack Parnell and his musicians going to the band room. It was a show business company, unlike any I've worked in since.
We needed big studios and big studio complexes in order to develop. So they bought Elstree, and then we went in and we made it in television.
At this point, really, with the big Elstree studios, you then start to look abroad even more, and you start with an enormous run of successful sales in the United States.
Yeah.
Selling action series to America was like coals to Newcastle, really, wasn't it?
Yes, but I gave them different surroundings, different areas, and of course they were a little bit cheaper. I must have sold 30 or 40 series there.
Every government has its Secret Service branch. America, it's CIA, France, Deuxième Bureau, England, MI5. A messy job? Well, that's when they usually call on me or someone like me. Oh, yes. My name is Drake. John Drake.
Lord Grade. He was Lew Grade at that time, and I had been doing a number of TV plays, a whole string of them, in the days when they were live. In other words, when it said in the studio, Vision On. And at the time, they were looking for someone to be in a new series that they were preparing called Danger Man. And he asked for me to come along, chat about it, invited me to do it.
£10,000.
A considerable sum.
The market is up on yesterday.
I take it you are going to work for me.
I must say I'm impressed by the way you go about things.
Why are you such a good salesman?
It's not that I'm a good salesman. It's a product.
Lew has a very canny sense of what the public will buy. And I read a script that I thought was awfully long for a half-hour series. It wasn't until I got to the press conference when Lew was announcing we were going to make 13 or 26 or 39 or something of the Saint hour shows. And I said half hour, and he said hour, and I said half hour. Bob Baker grabbed me and said, he said, these are hours. I said, I thought the script was well padded.
Comes the producer's wife. What shall I say?
Come, darling. I want you to meet the most fantastic man. I've told you about him. John, this is Simon Templar.
It wasn't real, it was glamorous. My hair was never untidy. The ladies always looked nice. You know, the sets were nice. But the farthest we ever got was on the back lot of ABPC Elstree. And they put a rubber palm tree in front of my face and on the screen, right, Bahamas.
Mind if I mess this up a bit?
Go ahead.
I was right.
Lew could have sold, he is the traditional man of whom you could say he could sell fridges to Eskimos. Lew would go to the States and describe a show and, I think, modify it according to the taste of his listener.
Whether it's girls or guns, the Saint can handle the situation.
He was going to the networks which were accustomed to taking pitches, and Lew was a pitcher on a grand scale.
Join the Saint as he deals in danger, dices with death, and always surrounded by a galaxy of gorgeous girls.
He certainly made America aware that there was an entity called Lew Grade and a production company called ITC.
But I mean, I never gave them a script. I just gave them the idea.
You're the first person to have been able to do that, and probably the only person that's still able to do it consistently. Why?
It was because they were beautifully and wonderfully produced. We had great talent in this country. But really, this talent has to be used for the world international market, not just for British consumption.
I went to see Lew Grade and said, I do happen to have a little idea. And sort of said, well, in here, Lew, we've got an outline for a story thing, a setting, here, had drawings and descriptions of things and the whole, and I think he became somewhat alarmed when he saw all these pages going by and said, no, he said, Pat, why don't you just tell me about it for a while? So I did that. I closed up the script or whatever it was and wandered around the office. I started to talk and he listened until I'd finished. I sat down. Then he got up, puffed on his cigar, marched around a little bit. Then he turned on me and he says, Pat, you see, you know, it's so crazy. It might work.
Can I help?
We're not quite sure what it means.
It means what it is.
Brilliant. It means what it is. Brilliant.
There were problems in America, there weren't there?
There were problems. What happened was, after viewing the 4th episode, the president of CBS came over to England to see me. He said, what's it about? It's wonderful. It's tremendous, something different. But what is the story about? What happens? I said, well, the best way for me to make you understand what it's all about is for you to meet with Patrick McGowan and arrange the meeting. He went up to Wales to where they were shooting, and he was there 2 days and came back. He says to me, I don't understand Patrick McGowan. Do you have problems with him? I said, I never have any problem at all with Patrick McGowan. He's wonderful. Well, how do you do it? I always give in to what he wants.
I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered. My life is my own.
That's how it happened, and I have to say about Lew Grade, rightfully Sir Lew Grade, rightfully thereafter Lord Grade, is that from the very moment that he said go and shook my hand, we never had a contract. He never interfered in anything that I did, never bothered me. It was marvelous. I can't conceive of anybody else in the world, then or now, giving me that amount of freedom with a subject which in many respects, I suppose you might say, was outrageous. You see, he has an instinct. He has a feeling for something.
I was in America, and I was very close with ABC. In fact, I would sit in when they were doing their schedules, and they said, we need a program for Tuesday, 10 o'clock. Amongst themselves, I'm just sitting there as a friend. I said, what about Roger Moore again?
That is one of them. An Englishman.
What do you know about him?
Everything.
They said, well, no, Roger Moore, you know, he's been 165 episodes of The Saint. We really want something different. I said, what happens if I get Tony Curtis?
As well?
As well.
An American. About him, I don't know everything.
They said, if you get Tony Curtis, you have a deal. I spoke to the agent. I want Tony Curtis to do a series called The Persuaders together with Roger Moore. He'll never do television. I went to California. Tony Curtis, at the ring of the doorbell, I opened the door. He says, what do I call you? I was then Sir Lew Grade. I says, call me what you like as long as you do the television series. I kept him there 1 hour. He said, okay, I'll do it. I then knew I had to face Roger Moore.
Will he fall for it? If we're clever enough.
He said, right, so we're going to do The Persuaders. I said, Lew, but I don't want to do it. I said, I didn't want to do any more television. He said, well, I've sold it. I said, you've sold it? He said, yes. I said, but is that sort of illegal, selling something that somebody doesn't want to do? He said, well, you know, the country needs the money. Think of the Queen.
First of all, I gave him a cigar. He liked to smoke cigars. And I went to the drawer and I'd written out a check. I said, this is to start with. He looked at that check and said, when do I start?
Take two relatively harmless compounds, say nitro and glycerin. Mix them both together and you have a very potent combination.
Handle it carelessly and it can blow your head off.
I was an agent at the time, and we were agents for Roger. And as I recall it, he had a contract to be billed first in the series, and
yeah.
We found out later. So did Tony Curtis. Yes.
I had a terrible job. I had to do two kinds of billings, one where Roger was first, and one where Tony was first, and we switched them around on episodes.
But what you knew was, if you tried to resolve the argument about the billing going in, the series would never have happened.
Oh, never, never.
Absolutely. So you took a chance.
I was pretty friendly with Roger. I knew he wouldn't let me down.
Right.
Tony Curtis I had to handle, but he was fine.
Fine. Well, that'll teach you to never trust a friend.
Looking back on it, it was an incredibly simple time. You got on with it, made the programs, they were made well or badly, and you moved on to the next. And the fact that you could relate to the person who, even if he didn't own the company, behaved as if he did, made for very short lines of communication. And made for some pretty eccentric decisions from time to time, but that's part of the charm.
We are going to produce a series of 6 1-hours. The title is self-explanatory, The Life of Jesus.
We all owe it, me first, to the absolute obstinate stubbornness of Lord Grade, Lew Grade, the best man perhaps I ever worked with in the movies.
Did Lord Grade worry about the expense?
Oh, yes, he said to Franco, remember, you are a movie director, but this is television, so you can't, how many people can you put in the television screen? You better cut down the numbers. You almost wanted me to cut down the number of the apostles, bring them down to 6, 12.
Before Jesus of Nazareth was transmitted in the States, General Motors, to whom you'd sold the show, withdrew. Why was that, and what did you do about it?
Well, General Motors withdrew because they felt that being such a worldwide company, they should not be involved in a religious series. However, they paid all the money. Therefore, I got NBC to put it on, and they sold it to Procter & Gamble just for the airtime.
Lazarus! Come forth!
but he were dead. Yet shall he live.
NBC asked me to come to America to negotiate for additional runs. And I said, fine, I'll meet you Monday at 10 o'clock. On Thursday, I had a phone call to say Procter & Gamble want to buy the rights to Jesus of Nazareth. Can you make it on Friday? I said, okay. They said, we love it, it's wonderful, phenomenal, we want to buy it. How much you want? I said, well, coming over on the plane, I had a vision. I saw a figure 25. Now, I knew it couldn't be $25. I knew it couldn't be 25,000. I therefore assume it means 25 million. That's what I want, 25 million. They said, you must be crazy. We'll offer you $12.5 million. I said, no, I'm sorry, I saw a vision, and that's at 25 million. They said, well, we're sorry. I didn't sleep Friday night, I didn't sleep Saturday night, I didn't sleep Sunday night, you can imagine. I then went to see NBC at 10 o'clock, and I was dying to get down to the business, but for 1 hour, how's Kathy, how's everything, you know. Eventually we got down to the business. We want to buy Jesus of Nazareth, how much you want? 25 million. You're crazy, we only want 5 runs. Anyway, we finished up at about 12 o'clock with them offering me 15.5. I said, well, I have to leave you now because I have to go to CBS. I go to CBS and I have lunch. I'm trying to sell them Sophia Loren and Omar Sharif in a miniseries based on Moulin Rouge and all sorts of things. And I feel they're not taking any notice of me. And I thought to myself, what have I done? Have I done something to upset them? Anyway, it was 2:30, and I said, I have to go now because I have to pack. I'm leaving tonight for London. They said, what about Jesus of Nazareth? I said, you're crazy. I still have to offer it to NBC, and if they meet the price, they have it. Okay, how much do you want? I said, I had a vision, 25 million. I said, okay, when do you want to know? I said, I've got to call NBC by 4 o'clock. Fine, we'll let you know by 4 o'clock. I then called head of business affairs at NBC. I said, you've got 28 minutes. The price is 25 million. Do you get the message? He said, I get the message. 10 minutes later, the chairman and chief executive of NBC, Herbert Schlosser, called me. He says, Lew, we've been friends for 15 years. How can you do this for me at such short notice? I need some time. I said, Herb, you've got 8 minutes left. 2 minutes before the phone rang. The president of CBS, if you'll say yes, I will pay you more than the 25 million. I said, that's not the way I work. If NBC come up with a price of 25 million, they have it. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, NBC came and they paid it 25 million.
Where did the vision come from?
I have no idea. I don't know where I got the figure from. And when I told the president of my distribution company in America that I got 25 million, he couldn't believe it. Just couldn't. I couldn't believe it myself.
That's what's so wonderful about him. He's not this hard businessman or this corporate businessman. He's a smart businessman, but there's a lot of warmth and charm to him.
Please, sir, my name is Kermit the Frog, and we read your ad, and, well, we've come to be rich and famous.
We owe a great deal to Lew because for years we tried to get the Muppet Show on the air. Not the Muppet Show, but a Muppet Show.
Miss Tracy, prepare the standard rich and famous contract for Kermit the Frog and Company.
How did that come about?
They've been turned down by every network in America. But I saw them on the Julie Andrews show.
Which was your show as well?
Yes. That's a great novelty. It's something different. And I approached Jim Henson, and I said, I'd like to do a television series. He said, I've been trying for 3 years to get onto television in America. I said, we're going to make 24 episodes. And we went ahead. And as you know, they were a phenomenal success. We made 120 episodes, and I made 3 movies with the Muppets.
It's time to play the music. It's time to play the fight. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
But needed somebody like Lew to really understand that there was much more with the Muppets than just for kids, that it transcended kids.
Right, I'm leaving. Oh, wait, John! Oh, what's the matter?
Damn it, I am not going to do some cloth-eared Mexican maraca solo.
If we needed a star and we had some trouble getting the particular star, Lew was a wonderful person to go to because he knew everybody.
How about this? Everybody, come on!
Damn it, there is no way I'll do a song.
Lord Grade, or Louis, as moi calls him, has done everything for Moi's career, and Moi's so deeply grateful. I mean, after all, I rented this cheap set for him. That's how much Moi loves him. This stuff's crated away in a truck in a second.
He's one of the breed that really took chances and takes chances.
Right, I'm leaving.
He's leaving.
In 1976, in accordance with the then IBA guidelines, the 70-year-old Lord Grade of Elstree was forced to relinquish the day-to-day running of ATV. But rather than retire, he immediately set about carving a new career in feature films.
If I can't get Glenda Jackson, I'll try to get Sophia Loren.
If they hadn't made you give up that day-to-day executive role in the running of ATV,
I'd have still loved it.
Would you have stayed in television and not gone into films?
I'd have probably still stayed in television, but also moved to film, because I'd done everything possible in television of the highest caliber. There was no way that I could do anything that could go higher. I felt with movies and theatrical films, you had a chance of achieving something different.
Mitchum is still Marlowe, and murder is still murder. In Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep.
He had this wonderful, slightly irritating habit, for example, of phoning me always at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was often casting the films till 1 o'clock in the morning to America, and I had to take all my files to my bedside table, and the phone would go at 7. I'd knock the files over, and Lew would say, "Why are we paying Joan Collins a living allowance? She's English."
Why? Why?
He's crazy. I say, "Well, Lew, she's living in America. She doesn't have an English home at the moment."
Shut up, Agnes! Joan Collins is Agnes. Blackmail's her business.
Nothing like better, I think, than to invent large star-studded casts for huge improbable projects.
And James Stewart is the general.
The fact is, Lew was trying to operate as an early Hollywood-style producer and mogul from a rather curious address in W1.
He was pre-selling his films, and if you pre-sell a film, you need stars, you need a package to be able to pre-sell in order to raise the money, and he was raising very large sums of money.
Among Grade's biggest hits were The Muppets, fresh from their award-winning TV series, and On Golden Pond, which won several Oscars. But it was the costly and ill-fated Raise the Titanic, which was to enter movie folklore.
Everybody doesn't believe that we'll raise the Titanic. You can't see very well from there, but some of you will get an idea. Here's us bringing up the Titanic. You see it? Then you see it coming up more. Right? And now here it is, it's up. The Titanic, it's there. I think it's 35 million well spent. I hope.
The press kind of turned a bit. They used the Titanic against you, didn't they?
Yes, because there was tremendous amount of publicity about the cost of the film. Sure. The problem was that I got a very famous, noted director who won numerous Oscars, and he built the Titanic, and there wasn't a tank in the world large enough to hold it. So we had to find a place in Malta next to a smaller tank, and they told me it would be finished in January. The only mistake they made is they didn't tell me which January. So I had all those costs, all the crews, all the staff, the directors, equipment, everybody standing by.
Isn't that a beautiful son of a bitch?
It would have been cheaper to lower the Atlantic.
What was tragic wasn't the fact that the Titanic sinking him as it did, it was the timing, you know, that I think if it had happened a year later, he could have survived it, coming off the back of On Golden Pond and one or two other things that had done really quite well. It was the timing that was so cruel.
Raise the Titanic's disastrous box office helped Grade's parent company ACC lose over £26 million. It was then that a power struggle began with his former ally, the Australian businessman Robert Holmes à Court.
Robert Holmes à Court became a shareholder in
Yes.
ATV, and you and he formed a very close relationship at that time. Was it a question that you needed him?
No, he wanted to buy the company. And he said to me, I want to buy your controlling voting shares. I said, how much you want to pay? He told me, I said, you have a deal, and I shook hands. I thought he cared about people, and I found out later that he only cared about one thing, money. And as far as I was concerned, money was the last thing I cared about. It was then, in spite of the fact that I had a further 3-year contract, I said, look, Robert, I don't want to stay with the company.
Ever since the catastrophe where ATV was lost and ITC was lost and ACC was lost and he lost control, I've never heard him say one word about that which could conceivably have been held up as a quite justifiable element of sour grapes, regret, just general, the sadness of it all.
Looking back and seeing you lose control of the company that you had built up, if it were me, I would be very angry and bitter. And
I never was. I felt sorry for the people that it got rid of, but I was happy in doing what I wanted to do.
You're a very forward-looking person.
I love the entertainment industry. I love people.
He still has ideas. He still has chutzpah. I mean, who else would have thought of turning Barbara Cartland's novels into television films? I mean, who else might have wanted to? But that's not the point. It was a terrific idea, and he sold it. You know, people are buying those films.
You should not wait for me.
I should not. But I shall. You must go. Soldiers will be here at any time.
How can I go now that I have found my only happiness?
People want to see escapism.
Why don't we seem able to do it now?
Mystery to me.
You've always said that you'd retire in the year 2000. Are you going to keep your word
well,
on that?
Well, no. You know, I'm beginning to think that, you know, it's a little bit soon. I think at the year 2000, I will have to consider retiring.
Thank you very much indeed.
And I want to thank the BBC for allowing me to smoke my Monte Cristo. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing me the giant TV, but Maverick and Cheyenne are not for me. There's only one guy that I want to see. Thanks a lot, but no, 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 thanks.